Are you ready? Are you shitty down?
The Schein on Podcast.
The Schein on Podcast.
The Schein on Podcast, Season 5.
We're going to pull back the curtain of the divorce process. It's fun, insightful, tremendous guests. They're topics that far too often many people shy away from. But not here on the Schein on Podcast.
It's episode 86 of the Schein on Podcast. I'm Evan Schein. Today, we are diving headfirst into a conversation you won't want to miss. Our featured guest of the podcast is Dr. David Ley, clinical psychologist, author, and expert in human sexuality. Get ready for an absolutely fascinating and thought-provoking discussion as we're going to tackle the myths, misconceptions, and realities about relationships, intimacy, and beyond. But that's not all. On the podcast, we have the docket and a stacked round of overrated, underrated. And before we get to that, producer Dave, how are you?
Great, Evan. Looking forward to this. Is a spicy episode, if I may say. A lot of places where you don't tend to go in normal conversation, but David Ley's expertise is renowned and very interesting conversation coming up.
And Dave, speaking of interesting, we're coming off a March Madness filled weekend, the brackets. I want to ask you, do you have a particular bracket technique, bracket style? Are you one of those guys who fills out one bracket or multiple brackets? What's your bracket technique? And what was your thought on the first round of the tournament?
Yeah, my technique is tried and true, Evan. I go through, I look at trends, I look at which teams are hot. I look for where the upsets are going to take place. And then I curse my bracket as some random sister-in-law of someone is winning the pool because she took all the number 1 and number 2 seeds. That's just the way it works. And
well, that's like my law partner who picks her bracket based on the mascots. So of course she's killing it the past 2 years because the Huskies are cutting down the nets. Right, obviously she picked them again this year, and obviously their season came to an end. But it drives me bonkers when you have people picking brackets based on mascots, based on their favorite colors. Come on, what is that?
Yeah, I did one year. I picked Coastal Carolina to go to the Final Four because I love that they're called the Chanticleers, and I don't even know what Chanticleer is. But sometimes it's the unconventional approaches. We talk about there were maybe a couple surprising upsets this past weekend, but really not too many. And so the pattern of this March Madness thing is, oh my God, look at all the upsets. My brackets are busted. And then a week later, it's like, oh, it's pretty much all the number 1 and number 2 seeds with a couple exceptions, and that's it.
Well, that was the thing. In recent memory, this had to be one of the most uneventful, uninteresting early rounds of the tournament. Like, I mean, I was glued to the Maryland-Colorado State game yesterday, which was great.
That was the only one that came down to the wire, right? Yeah.
That was it. And I always get into this debate with people. Do you want to have a better early round of the tournament, or would you rather have a better Elite Eight and Final Four? And I will say it is shaping up with the number 1 seeds, number 2 seeds, minus St. John's, to have a stacked top of the bracket Elite Eight and Final Four, which in some respects is great because what happens is you have these lower seeds make a run, and at some point they usually end up getting blown out. Yeah. It's just a matter of when does it happen.
Yeah. There's a reason why that James Madison or Canisius was ranked 15. It's not it's not because they're probably going to win the tournament. It's the opposite.
Yeah, no, and it's an exciting time. March Madness, opening days on the horizon. I know your Red Sox making some late moves in the offseason. What's your take on the Red Sox and their season? And are you ever going to pay up on the bet? I feel like you owe me 5 steak dinners at this point because, Dave, I'm still waiting for you to make the trip to New York.
All right. Well, I know, and sadly I haven't been yet, but I promise. Well, I'll take you out for dinner. You can have 5 steaks when we go. Yeah, the Red Sox have made some mostly subtle moves, but they've made good moves. Hope springs eternal, so look out, Yankees. And you must be chomping at the bit to erase the what was a great season for the Yankees last year, but ultimately disappointing.
disappointing, and losing Juan Soto was huge. Losing Garrett Cole for the year. He's undergoing Tommy John surgery is a huge loss. All I want to know, though, are you up for another bet?
Okay. We stakes again?
Stakes again. Here's what we're going to do, though. How about we make two bets? Whichever team is the better record, All-Star break, and then overall for the whole season.
All right, I like this because that way we have something on the near horizon and the far horizon. All right,
So I need to hold you accountable. Here's the problem. I feel like when we only do an 162 games, we forget. I forget to collect on the bet. I'd love to go out to dinner. Would love that steak, but I need something a little more within reach from a timing standpoint. I got to hold you accountable, Dave.
Okay,
Not too many
fine.
people do that.
All right, I'll see you in Boston at the All-Star break when you come visit me and buy me a steak dinner.
You got it, Dave. I know you have an awesome. I know you got a great docket, so let's fire it up as we always do on the podcast.
Let's do it.
And now, let's see what's on the docket.
All right, couple of very compelling items on the docket today, including the first one that comes to us from the Denver Post.
Item 1.
The headline reads, "Asking Eric, decades after divorce, second wife wants to share the truth with the children." Now, this is Eric, the advice column in the Denver Post, and it's very interesting because this woman has been widowed for nearly a decade, and her husband had been previously married, and I guess I'll just explain the whole thing, Evan, and get your thoughts. He had been previously married and had consistently told his kids that, sadly, his ex-wife had spread some lies about him to the kids. And so our heroine here, the woman who just lost her husband, she discovers these 60-year-old letters that show that her departed husband was telling the truth. And now she wants to tell the kids. They aren't her kids. They were the dude who died, his kids. Very interesting. Your thoughts on this one?
Dave, I got to tell you, it was an interesting question. And I went back and forth a few times. And ultimately, I want to get your take. Ultimately, I'm going to disagree with Eric, right? I'm going to disagree with the columnist here. I get it, and I can appreciate why he's giving the advice, which is,
So
look,
just to be clear, yeah, he says leave well enough alone, right?
yeah, leave it alone. If the dad wanted, his children to know the truth and to have these letters, he would have shared them himself. I get that, and I appreciate it, and I don't have much of an argument, quite frankly, against that position. Now, with that said, I get it from her perspective. She has an opportunity. The father is not living, passed away. The children are older. They might be in a better position to appreciate the why behind certain things, the why behind certain actions. I don't know. I feel like she has an opportunity to set the record straight, to vindicate, in many ways, the father in the eyes of the children. And I would worry less about the reasons the father chose not to share the letters. And if she feels that it would help the children process what happened when they were much younger and set the truth free, that's the way that I would lean.
Yeah, fair enough. There's more information maybe that we need in order to really give an opinion on this. But yeah, the columnist, Eric, says if the husband, the departed husband, had wanted to, he could have given the letters at some point in those 50 years in the interim there. Maybe there's an in-between. Maybe our letter writer here can find some selective letters that simply showed the kids how much he loved the kids. I do get, like the columnist, I get a little worried that if your only goal is to malign this guy's first wife, then maybe you're stirring up it for no good reason. But yeah,
and I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dave, I agree with that. If that is the only reason, then sure, I would side with you and the columnist. But if there's a rationale, or if the thought is, you know what, the kids have struggled enough, They likely might have been in therapy. Who knows? Let them process this, but this is a positive, right? They have been through
Right.
enough, and it just doesn't strike me as one of those things that you've come into this, you let it lie, you do nothing about it. Again, there's a risk to both sides of it, but I do think it's important if she believes the children can handle it. I think there's something to be said for knowing, the truth about their father.
I agree. If it's I think the older you get, the more you get curious about what your parents' life was when they were young, and this could be a positive thing. 50 years from now, I'm going to send the links to all these podcasts to your kids to make sure they know how impressive their dad was.
I appreciate that,
Okay.
Dave. And Dave, by the way, with advice like that, how's that Ask Dave column coming? I know we talked about it. I think it was season 3, season 4. Now we're on season 5. I'm not seeing anything in the works with Ask Dave. And there's a lot of people who would benefit from an Ask Dave column.
Yeah, there are a lot. There are probably many more who would find it useless. But who knows? Who knows? That's in development, Evan. We'll work on it. We move on to item number 2.
Item 2.
Comes to us from yahoo.com and ponders the question, can a bathroom divorce save a marriage? It tells the story of one East Coast woman's move within her marriage. And the move was that they separated bathrooms completely. So they're still married as far as I can tell, but bathroom life is completely separate. Your thoughts on this one, Evan?
Dave, we talked about the sleep divorce, which, look, I get it. The bathroom divorce, I get it too. But here's my problem. When does it end? What's next? The kitchen divorce? You want your own kitchen? The TV divorce? My favorite recliner divorce? I mean, when does it just become absolutely ridiculous? And you have to beg the question, why are you getting married if you're going to have all these nuanced divorces? The sleep divorce, the bathroom divorce, the kitchen divorce. You might as well actually get divorced if you find yourself checking off all the boxes that I mentioned. I don't know. I get the bathroom. I get the sleep. Those are very intimate types of things. And look, many disagreements come under the covers. Are you too hot? Are you too cold? Do you like the sheets to be tucked in, tucked out? Sure. My wife and I disagree on all that too. But I don't know. There's something about this. Maybe it's a slippery slope argument. When does it end?
So you don't have a man cave where you retire to watch the Yankees game?
Oh, of course I do. Of course I
do. Okay, so that's
100%.
okay.
That's okay. That's okay, Dave.
All right. Well, viva la man cave, but watch out. Yeah, you don't want it to dissolve into the situation depicted in the film War of the Roses, where they're putting down masking tape across the house with the Mason-Dixon line. Yeah.
Yeah, there's also a reality to this, right? People live in apartments. There's a cost to all this, right? You need
That's right.
I'm not so sure how realistic it is for people who, have the sleep divorce and bathroom divorce. Dave, you know what? I'm going to put you to work. We got to get someone on the podcast who is going through a bathroom divorce. You know what? I want to talk to that person. Bring him or her on the podcast. That's your homework for this week.
Flash forward to a moment where you're conducting a deposition in a bathroom divorce. That would be interesting. We move on to the segment that everybody loves. Is it overrated or underrated? Let's do it.
Or underrated.
We have 5 quickie topics for Evan to pronounce judgment upon. Most of them are legal in nature, but then we throw in a fun one at the end. Number 1, depictions of divorce on television. Overrated or underrated?
Dave, my answer to this might surprise you, but my answer is overrated. Look, I absolutely love watching lawyer movies, lawyer-focused TV shows, from entertaining shows from Suits to Lincoln Lawyers to legendary movies like A Few Good Men and My Cousin Vinny. However, when it comes to the depiction of divorce on TV, I think it overwhelmingly misses the mark. Sure, there's TV shows and movies that nail it. The Affair on Showtime was brilliant. I love that. But I think there is this tendency on TV shows to create this expectation in clients that that's how their divorce is going to be, that they're going to file for divorce and get divorced tomorrow. So the problems I have with it, I think it creates this unrealistic expectation on the process, the timing, the cost. It's overly glamorized in terms of the divorce process and also post-divorce life, right? You see on TV shows how people are living their absolute best life. And I'm not to suggest that doesn't happen in real life, except I find that in the movies and on TV, it happens the next day, right? There is that grieving period. There is that transition. You don't wake up, say you want to get divorced, you're divorced tomorrow, and all of a sudden you're living your best life. What's your thought?
Yeah, well, I would tend to agree. I'll point to the classic TV show LA Law, which was probably the reason I went to law school, because I loved the show so much. Not a great reason, but it was often criticized because it was like 4 or 5 very complex court cases were all settled up very nicely within the course of 60 minutes. And so I'm with you there, and I'd agree. Overrated. Incidentally, my friend produced a short film last year and invited me to play a small role in it. And she said, you're going to play this, you're going to come in with your son. So it was a thrill because my wonderful son, Adrian, who happens to have autism, was with me that day. He played my son, and he was credited in the film as Adrian Yaz, newcomer Adrian Yaz, and I was credited as divorced dad. So I'm being
That's awesome, though. That had to be a great experience.
It was a lot of fun, but I'm being typecast, Evan. Now I can only play the divorced dad. We move on to the next item. This is a topic that is hot among any young people contemplating law school. Law school rankings. They've been around forever. Law school rankings, overrated or underrated?
Dave, my answer to this might surprise you too. I'm going to say overrated with an exception. Look, for anyone who's not in the top 20 or the tier 1 rankings or whatever you want to identify as the top tier, it's overrated, and I get it. Look, the logic is everyone graduates, everyone gets those fantastic initials, the JD, and they're the same. Whether you went to Harvard or you went to Syracuse Law School, where I went, you're a licensed attorney. You take the bar's the same, you graduate, you get licensed, you're a licensed attorney, and welcome to the real world of practicing law. However, here's my exception. It does matter, and it matters to the people that study their absolute ass off, that were fortunate to get into these top schools. Good for them, and I don't want to take away anything from anyone who it was important to them to go to the Harvards, to go to the Yales, to go to the Georgetown, to go to those top schools. And it matters to certain employers that only look to associate themselves, right, wrong, or indifferent, with people who graduate from those particular law schools. Now, with that said, when it comes to hiring, we want the best possible person. We want someone relatable, someone who understands what it means to be a lawyer and who's adaptable and who could be trained. Where you went to law school, to me, doesn't necessarily matter or make a difference, but it matters to the people that it actually matters to. And I don't want to take away anything from those students who are sitting in a class at Harvard or Yale, because you know what? It matters to them, even if the majority of people will tell you they disagree with it.
But we're going to go with overrated.
Overrated.
And I'll agree with you. It's hard to, never mind the law school selection process, the college selection process is so much. It's been blown out, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's a huge business now. Parents spend incredible amounts of time and money, not realizing that a number of years after you graduate from said law school or said college, it doesn't matter that much. You make your own way.
That's it. You got to work hard. It's who you know, the hard work. You got to make your own way. And look, the two of us, living proof. We're doing all right.
That's right. Next item for overrated, underrated. Opening statements in trials. The one opening statement I made in law school during a mock trial, I started arguing and the judge corrected me and I didn't know what I was doing and I got yelled at and it was very embarrassing. But in real life, opening statements are probably important. Your thoughts?
And Dave, that might have been the end of your litigation career, but look, opening statements in trials, they are underrated. Someone once told me when I first started practicing, take any opportunity you get to preview your case to the judge. Ask for it, insist on it. If the judge is resistant, push back respectfully and even offer to give an opening statement in 2 minutes if there is pushback from the judge. Why? An opening statement is powerful and it can really be an incredible thing. You get to preview your case. You get to do it in an uninterrupted fashion, no objections. You get to preview for the court the testimony that the judge is going to hear. You get to preview the exhibits, your witnesses. you can humanize your client and yourself as the attorney. And I'm talking about in the matrimonial context. And next time, for anyone listening, you get to stand up in court and you have the option for an opening statement. I don't care how simple of a hearing or a trial you think it is. Take a moment, ask the judge to give an opening statement. And I can also promise you that many times judges will reference back to your opening statement. But I'll tell you this, if you're going to say you're going to show something, you're going to say you're going to prove something, you're going to say what the witnesses and evidence will show, you better deliver that.
I do it. Yeah.
Underrated.
Well, for this next item, Evan, I'm going to grant you permission to treat me as a hostile witness because the topic is cross-examination techniques. Overrated or underrated?
Dave, this is underrated as well. Look, watching a great cross-examination is like eating a great slice of pizza, maybe with pineapple, maybe not. But I got to tell you, it's phenomenal. It's magic. It's a work of art. Watching a cross-examination that absolutely bombs and misses the mark, look, it's like eating a bad, overcooked slice of pizza. I think it was Malcolm Gladwell in one of his books who said 10,000 hours to perfect anything, right? I don't know if it was Blink or one of his great books, but cross-examination is just that. It's a skill. It's knowing what to ask, when to ask it, and also what not to ask and when to sit down. It's also knowing when to stop. It's as much of an art as it is a science. It's a skill. It's a rhythm. There's a cadence to it. There's a psychology to it. Cross-examination is often solely the reason you will win or lose your case as a trial attorney. So if you're interested in trial advocacy, absolutely take a class, study it, perfect it, and become the best trial attorney you can be.
Underrated.
I agree. It was my favorite part of trial advocacy. Remember fondly. We move on. The final question, the final topic, I should say, for overrated, underrated. It's a hot topic. At least it's supposed to be hot when it's served. Movie theater popcorn. I was just in the cinema just the other day with my son seeing Snow White, which was terrible. Don't bother. But the popcorn was good. Your thoughts? Movie theater popcorn. Overrated, underrated.
Well, Dave, does that mean you got the popcorn? You and Adrian?
We share it. We share.
Sure. But you got the popcorn, and that's my point. Movie theater popcorn, it's underrated. Look, it gets knocked far too often. Back in the day, it often lost out to a Snickers or an M&M's or Sour Patch Kids or Milk Duds, which were crazy because they would end up getting stuck on you, stuck on the seats. It was a disaster. But here's the problem with movie theater popcorn. With all these fancy movie theaters, it now loses out to sushi or whatever else these theaters are offering to get people into movie theater seats. What happened to the traditional Coke and popcorn, extra butter and salt? And sure, I know it's about 2,000 calories, probably more. And look, I'm not saying get it every time or get the jumbo size. Look, a small size of movie theater popcorn is just fine, but it's old school. It's romantic. It's traditional. It's a vibe. It's an experience. Next time you're in a movie theater, get the popcorn. You'll thank me later.
Underrated.
I couldn't agree more. It's a couple things. If you can only teach your children a couple things, teach them always popcorn at the movie theater, always hot dog at a baseball game. It will always taste better. You can't replicate it at home. You just can't.
No, and Dave, think about it. I remember probably when you were dating, a teenager back in the day, your hands, you and your date, you're reaching into the popcorn box, your hands are grazing, they're touching. That was the first sign that you're thinking to yourself, you know what? She might be into me.
All thanks to the popcorn.
Are you navigating the challenges of divorce and feeling overwhelmed? You're not alone, and you don't have to go through it alone. You should get in touch with Rhonda Nordyke, financial divorce advocate, where it's all about you. Rhonda helps women transform what can feel like the most difficult time into a journey of empowerment. As a certified financial analyst, Rhonda is committed to guiding women to make confident financial decisions, negotiate effectively, and be positioned to leave a legacy well beyond the divorce process. She has not only helped over 1,000 women that trusted her, but also helped move $25 million into the hands of women that otherwise would have been left on the table. She'll even help you find the right attorney, support you in managing conflict productively, and give you the tools to advocate for yourself. Connect with her today at womensfinancialwellnesscenter.com, because your divorce experience should lead to a stronger, happier you.
Have you ever had a baking oops turn into something delicious? Well, that's exactly what happened with muffin crumbles, the dessert that's part muffin, part magic, and all mouth-watering fun. The amazing bakers at Muffin Crumbles take perfectly crumbled muffins, yes, crumbled on purpose, add fluffy homemade whipped cream, and top it all off with delicious extras. It's like a dessert party in a box. And the best part, no rules, just pure dessert freedom. Spoon it, fork it, or mix it all up. You do you. Perfect for treating yourself, gifting a friend, or just making snack time way more fun. So grab your spork and order your Muffin Crumbles kit now at muffincrumbles.com. That's muffincrumbles.com, because sometimes the best things come from happy accidents.
Our featured guest on this week's episode of the Schein podcast is Dr. David Ley, a clinical psychologist, certified sex therapist supervisor, consultant, and expert witness. As an expert advisor on the board of Sexual Health Alliance, Dr. Ley is an internationally recognized authority on sexuality, pornography, and mental health. He has appeared on major platforms alongside Anderson Cooper, Katie Couric, and Dr. Phil, bringing critical insights into the evolving conversation around sex and psychology. Dr. Ley, great to have you with us on the Schein podcast.
Thanks for having me, Evan.
And I know a few years ago, you published an article, Forensic Applications of Sex Addiction in U.S. Legal Proceedings. And I want to start by talking about that article. Why do you think the term sex addiction has gained so much popularity, even though it's not recognized as an accepted mental health diagnosis?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Evan. First, well, I guess I would say maybe 2 or 3 reasons. One, it is a simplistic answer for a very complicated issue, which is why some people engage in sexual behaviors that other people don't want them to engage in. And it's really easy to say, oh, well, it's an addiction. And all of us, I think, intuitively, just humans, have a little bit of intrinsic mistrust of sexuality, because we all have had times where we had a thought of doing something sexually that we knew we would regret or shouldn't do, whether it is masturbation or touching somebody without consent or engaging in infidelity or tempted by some sexuality that we in our right minds wouldn't do. That can feel like what we equate with an addiction, like being unable to control yourself. However, I think more insidiously, calling sex an addiction is a way to mask the moral judgment that is really going on here. The engaging in infidelity. Infidelity is not a disease. This is not a disease process. But by acting as though engaging in infidelity is a medical issue, it hides that this is morality being imposed. That, I think, is the more important part, especially when we look at legal issues, is that these are moral issues being imposed, oftentimes behind the color of medicine or law. The last thing I would say is that calling it an addiction hides personal responsibility. We published research just a couple of years ago in 23 that found that narcissism was actually one of the number one predictors of identifying as a sex or a porn addict. That changes things, because now it says, oh, maybe what's going on here is people hiding their personal responsibility behind this medical sounding excuse. So for a lot of reasons, the concept of sex addiction, or the label of sex addiction, serves some interesting purposes, but it doesn't really help anybody. And my argument is, in fact, that the muddiness of this label actually hurts. It hurts us from holding people responsible for their behaviors. It hurts us in terms of helping people deal with the issues that are actually going on here. And we can talk about that. But finally, it unfortunately puts therapists and healthcare providers in the role of being moral judges. That's not my job.
And David, let's go from moral judges to the actual judges in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And I see forensic evaluations in custody proceedings, divorce proceedings. People use the term sex addiction quite frequently. What do you think forensic custody evaluators or judges, or both, get wrong about understanding sex addiction, or simply don't understand when it comes to this area, when there is an issue that would otherwise fit in the context of, let's say, a divorce proceeding or a custody proceeding?
A couple of really important things. I mean, obviously, I can talk about this stuff for a long time, but two, I think, critically important things. Number one is that there are no research studies that demonstrate that sex addiction treatment is an effective treatment. There are no studies that indicate particularly that sex addiction treatment is an effective treatment for individuals with pedophilia or demonstrating interest in child sexual abuse material. That is critically important because one of the things that I see is judges ordering individuals to go to sex addiction treatment after they are caught, for instance, with child sexual abuse material or engaging in abusive or illegal behavior. And it's troubling if a judge is ordering somebody to sex addiction treatment thinking it's going to help, thinking it's going to protect the public, thinking it is going to help this person change their behavior. Now there are established and evidence-based treatments for child sexual abuse material, for pedophilia, for sexual offending behaviors. Sex addiction is not one of them. Now, in fact, the Society for ATSA, Treatment of Sexual Abusers, during the Harvey Weinstein scandal, they actually put out a statement identifying specifically what I just said. Sex addiction treatment is not an appropriate treatment for criminal sexual behavior. And it's unfortunate when judges are sending people to this treatment because they think they're doing right. The second thing I think that is most important for judges and attorneys to understand is that the sex addiction label applied internally to yourself or applied externally by somebody else is overwhelmingly a moral label. And so it is applied by wives when the husband wants more sex than the wife does. It's applied oftentimes by attorneys and judges when there is somebody engaging in sexual behaviors that for some reason the judge or the attorneys disapprove of. There's this wonderful, very depressing law review journal article that talked about these kind of moral judgments applied by judges and attorneys, and women engaging in infidelity get called sex addicts. Men caught watching pornography by their ex-wife get ordered into monitored, supervised visitation with the kids, with this idea that immoral behavior makes these people at risk. But the thing is that sex addicts, so-called sex addicts, actually are not having more sex or watching more porn than anybody else. In fact, typically they are watching less. They're engaging in less sexual behavior. But because of the moral conflict, they feel, the ones who self-label as sex addicts or porn addicts, they have moral conflict with the sexual behaviors that they engage in or that they want to engage in. So for instance, a self-identified heterosexual who has interest in gay sex oftentimes will identify those desires as addiction because they don't want to have those desires. others. So unfortunately, the label of sex addict points us at the sex as opposed to the conflict. Why is this person struggling with this sexual behavior? Where does that conflict come from? In good therapy, that's what we explore. Unfortunately, in court, we get distracted by the sex. I call these sexy, shiny objects that distract us from dealing with the person and the person in their context. We can best help them by understanding all of that.
There's an active effort pretty recently in Oklahoma to ban pornography.
I saw that.
What give us your reaction to that?
No, 98% by the last count of Oklahoma males will now be committing a crime at some point in their life. 89% of females. Those are the national numbers for lifetime use of pornography. Again, like I said, it's a sexy, shiny object. Let's distract everybody by pointing at this thing. In 1919, the United States prohibited alcohol, with the idea that alcohol was the cause of mental retardation, divorce, crime. 10 years later, all of those things were still there. The same is true here. Porn gets blamed for all kinds of things. But the reality is porn is as much an effect, and probably much more of an effect of things than cause. We can protect people from there are some negative effects in pornography, and I'm not going to lie about that.
Sure.
But we can protect people, especially young people, from those negative effects by providing good sex education. Instead, we refuse to provide good sex education, and then we blame pornography when people go to pornography and learn unhealthy lessons from it because we refuse to give them sex ed.
So on the topic of sex ed, is there one thing in particular, David, that you believe should absolutely be taught so people have that education?
Yeah, and still looking at pornography. There is some remarkable literature now about pornography literacy.
Okay.
And it really speaks to the issue that I was talking about, that these training and education models teach young people what pornography is and isn't, and specifically teach young people that pornography is not real sex, because it doesn't show negotiation, it doesn't show aftercare, it doesn't show preparation, it doesn't show safe sex, it doesn't just so many things. The unfortunate thing is that the young people that are most likely to learn unhealthy lessons about sex from porn are the young people that think pornography is real sex. And they think that because they haven't been educated, and they don't have adults in their life that they can talk to in healthy ways about sexuality. These are most oftentimes conservative or young people growing up in conservative, religiously based households that don't talk about sex. So unfortunately, those kids are at the highest risk to experience this harm. But we can mitigate that harm by, God help me, vaccinating them against the dangers of pornography. But I mean, that's another hot button issue that is going to exacerbate all these conversations.
When we look at what you mentioned, porn, not the cause, but the effect, I have clients who sit across from me in my office, and they'll come in and say, look, my spouse is addicted to porn, or my spouse spends hours in front of his or her computer, and I just need to get divorced. I can't take it. What would you say to that person who's in my office? Is it the pornography, or is there something else much deeper that's happening in the relationship that is really the underlying cause, not what's happening on the screen?
Yeah. So I see those same couples and people, and I will tell you that there is always a chicken that came before that egg.
Yep.
And that chicken is a mismatch in the libido and the erotic relationship that this couple has. Overwhelmingly, people that are using pornography in a relationship are using it because their sexual relationship is dissatisfying in some way. Either there's a desire discrepancy in terms of frequency of sex. Many couples I've seen in this situation, one partner has simply lost all interest in sex and doesn't want the other partner to still want sex. And when that other partner wants sex, now they go to pornography and masturbation as an alternative. Particularly in men use masturbation and pornography to compensate for decreased sex in a relationship. Secondly, there is a desire for sex that the other partner doesn't want. I see many folks where one partner is disgusted by the other partner's sexual fantasy or desire. And because of that, the only way that other partner can fulfill that interest is through pornography. The couples aren't talking about or resolving those conflicts. Now, a friend of mine, Sam Perry, in Oklahoma, interestingly, is a researcher who published research a few years ago from his dissertation, I believe. And that research, he's a sociologist. That research initially said that pornography use predicted later divorce. There was an uproar, of course, and lots of the news loved that research. However, Sam Perry listened to folks like me. I got to know him after that, and we said there's more to the story. He actually went back and he reanalyzed his own data, and he found that when he separated out masturbation, that pornography use actually was slightly positive in terms of protecting marriages. However, higher masturbation predicted divorce, not because masturbation is bad for a marriage, but because increased masturbation is a reflection of that desire discrepancy and mismatch of eroticism in the relationship, predicting that at some point in the future, that person who is sexually dissatisfied is going to be more likely to now terminate the relationship. There's a common myth in attorneys that 50% of divorces involve pornography. We actually drilled down into that. Me and a colleague identified the origin of that myth, and it came from a survey of divorce attorneys that was conducted at a conference. We wrote to the people that published that or made that claim. It was not a scientific study. It was not a scientific article that was published. And we asked them for their data. They refused to give it to us. So that claim is incredibly subjective.
Got it. David, what are some of the misconceptions people have about your job and the work that you do?
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, I mean, with the last name Lay, everybody thinks I'm having a lot more sex than I am. It's disturbing that so many people think that sex therapists are having sex with patients. We're absolutely not. They also think that they don't understand how much of my work is focused on helping people reduce the shame that they feel about their own sexuality. The shame is the real root of a lot of these problems. People with higher levels of sexual shame feel less self-control of their sexual behaviors. They hate themselves more. They are more angry at God oftentimes. They're less able to enjoy healthy sexuality. A lot of us lived through the purity movement and the purity rings of the 90s and such. That stuff did a lot of damage. A lot of sex therapists that I know are working with the survivors of those movements, now trying to help them embrace and accept their own sexuality in a healthy way. A lot of people don't understand that's most of the work.
And David, I have to ask you, do you feel like you ever not get invited to your friends' dinner parties or over your friend's house for fear of what the conversation might turn into?
Oh no, they're always asking me because they want free therapy. I mean, just like they're asking you for free law.
Well, that is
advice.
true. Yeah, no, you got that right. So let me ask you, what's the funniest or most awkward thing someone has ever asked you in a social setting, knowing what you do for a living?
Yeah, I mean, ask me to help them convince their partner to have a threesome. Not with me, just in general.
Give us a sex myth that you wish would absolutely die forever.
That watching pornography causes erectile dysfunction. There is this online myth that watching too much pornography breaks your penis. The reality is that that effect comes from anxiety and shame. That people who feel ashamed and nervous about watching pornography are more likely to experience erectile dysfunction when they're with a partner. But it's caused by the anxiety and the shame, not by the pornography. Unfortunately, there are these online grifters and people that engage in horrific exploitation that promote these myths and then use them and the vulnerability in people, particularly young men, to now induce and entice them into anti-Semitism, misogyny, white supremacy, violence. It's really disturbing and troubling. And it all comes from that intuitive nervousness that most of us have about sexuality, mostly because we are taught to be afraid of sex. We're taught that if you're too turned on, you might engage in evil or hurt somebody or lose control. The reality is sexual arousal doesn't turn anybody into a bad person.
And David, you see this day in and day out with your work and your research and your studies and everything you do. I see this often when someone's in my office, the impact of how this behavior or the issues that we're talking about, how that could impact someone's marriage. Do you think monogamy is sustainable in today's world, or are we forcing an unnatural expectation?
I think it is for some people. Yeah. And first, we have to, I hate to be a pedant about this, but we have to look at the words. Monogamy actually means lifetime pair bonding. It doesn't require lifetime sexual fidelity. Okay, a lot of the birds, like swans, sure, that are oftentimes held up as monogamous, they're actually screwing around behind each other's backs. That when they've looked at the DNA of their children, many of them are not related to these mates. We have applied expectations and mandates around sexual fidelity. That's one thing. So there are a lot of, I'm sure you're aware, there are a lot of couples out there now exploring various forms of consensual non-monogamy. Some research says that as much as 25% of the American population will be in a consensually non-monogamous relationship of some kind at some point. However, I don't think that consensual non-monogamy is the right answer for everybody. It takes a certain kind of person, a certain kind of relationship to make that work. But what I think we do need to look at is expectations around marriage that are isolating. In the 1970s, there was a book called Open Marriage by George and Nina O'Neill. A lot of people point at that book and say, well, but they later got divorced, the authors. Yep. Well, yeah, I mean, they did, but when monogamous people get divorced, we don't blame monogamy. Sure. The interesting thing about that book, though, was that sex with people outside the marriage was only a small piece of what they were arguing about. What they were actually arguing for was for married people to be able to have interests and friendships outside the marriage. There are many women, I was talking to one the other day, who is not allowed to talk to men outside of a work situation because her husband gets so jealous. That is something going on there. Oh, I think that we can help marriages and relationships be healthier by having more realistic expectations about people and not treating each other's sexuality as property. I see a lot of couples that the one partner feels tremendous threat or assault if the other partner finds somebody else attractive. Like, you know, that once we get married, I no longer am, I should no longer find anybody else attractive. In North Carolina, I believe, North Carolina is the only state where it is still on the books that a person whose spouse cheats on them can sue the person that the spouse cheats on them with. Because the sexual fidelity is treated as property. And in that, it's usually a wife suing another woman for stepping on her turf. That, I think, is one of the things that is challenging here. So many people view a partner watching pornography as a violation of monogamy. What research, a researcher named Nagy, N-E-G-Y, in Florida did research on this and actually found that women who view pornography as cheating are more likely to be insecure and more likely to be religious. That this is a fear of them not being enough. We can help with that by dispelling a lot of the myths around what pornography is and isn't, and dispelling a lot of myths about sexuality in general.
What keeps you up at night? What's that burning question around what you do around human sexuality that science still hasn't figured out?
We don't actually know where anybody's primary sexual fantasy or interest comes from. We blame and shame people for being interested in something or having a fantasy of something that we think there's something wrong with that they shouldn't have. Most people, over 90% of people, never share their sexual fantasies with anybody, not their therapist, not their spouse, because they're afraid of judgment. The thing is, it's a roll of the dice. It is this intersection between biology, our genetic predispositions, and things that we encounter at some point in our childhood and development of our eroticism that then become the thing that turns us on. But we don't know where that comes from. Some people are into spanking. Some people are into fantasies of threesome. Some people are into fantasies of public sex. But we don't know why or how that happens and why this person is into this and this person's into that. It is remarkable. And the thing that I struggle with it the most is we hold people responsible for having that fantasy, like they chose it, like they they woke up one morning and decided, this is what I'm gonna masturbate and fantasize about for the rest of my life. No, just happened. A friend of mine, Jim Faust, is a sex researcher. He looked at this and he said, we find this one fantasy that helps us orgasm more easily. And then that becomes our go-to fantasy that we go to over and over and over again for the rest of our life. And so we teach ourselves to make that more and more effective. But why that one thought or fantasy was the thing that made it easier for you to orgasm, nobody knows.
Let's talk about pop culture. What's one pop culture portrayal of sex, relationships, human sexuality that you see time and time again that makes your eyes just roll?
That people who want sex more than other people think they should are inherently bad, evil, murderous people. I mean, particularly in the 90s, thinking about the movies Basic Instinct and such, anybody who was non-monogamous or was slutty or was kinky, that they were also evil and murderous psychopaths. I will say that's one of the places where my wife and I differ. We talk about this stuff a lot, but having done this work now for so long, I don't find anybody's sexuality frightening. There are people I find frightening. People who are untrustworthy, people who are impulsive, people who do not have self-control, people who are angry and act out and blame other people for their behaviors. I'm afraid of those people. But those people might have sexual desires that, because I know the diversity of sexuality. I know that there are grandmas and grandpas out there who are the sweetest, nicest people and have some deep, dark, disturbing sex fantasies and interests. Those are the things that have changed the way I view people. It's why I can sit and I can hear things from people that maybe used to be terrifying, but aren't anymore.
That's fascinating. Producer Dave, I'm going to bring you back on the podcast. I know you were taking copious notes, and anytime there's a movie reference, and especially Basic Instinct, it's a good time to bring you back on. I know you're a big movie guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want to move to the They Said It segment, Evan? Or you want to talk?
Do it.
Okay. And then maybe we'll talk. Well,
Hey, before we jump up there, could I share just one other thing that the way I got into some of this work originally, especially as I do forensic expert witness work now, testifying around sexuality, was I was asked to come in to a couple of cases in Ohio where attorneys had gotten caught engaging in inappropriate sexual behavior. One was an exhibitionist that would jump out and flash people. Another was an attorney who got caught having sex with multiple clients. Both of them suffered consequences for it, but they tried to get their bar license preserved by claiming that they were sex addicts and that was why they weren't responsible for the behaviors. Both of them kind of went to sex addiction treatment, trying to show they were taking seriousness of it. The Ohio Supreme Court brought me in to testify about the fact that sex addiction wasn't real, wasn't legitimate. And that actually ended up prompting a whole lot of my career. But unfortunately, there are still lots of judges, lots of courts, lots of professionals out there that, get caught engaging in inappropriate or illegal behavior and claim sex addiction to preserve their career. It's one of the things that I want court systems to know about much, much more.
No, it's fascinating. That's fascinating.
All
right. Ready for They Said It?
Let's get into it. Let's get into it right now.
They said it.
They said it.
They said it.
All right. They Said It is the portion of the program where I throw out some quotes from famous people, notable people, and then we will get David's reaction, pro, con, or otherwise. First quote comes to us from British philosopher Bertrand Russell, who had the following to say. I won't do it in the accent. The suppression of the sexual impulse cannot, in the long run, be anything but harmful. That from British philosopher Bertrand Russell. David, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's a fabulous quote. It's a lot like a similar quote from Jack Morin, who said, when you go to war with your own sexuality, you're guaranteed to lose. That, interestingly, Yaniv Efrati is an Israeli researcher who looked at people that, mostly Orthodox Jews, the harder they try not to think about masturbation, guess what happens? The more they think about masturbation. That trying to suppress sexuality paradoxically oftentimes decreases our self-control of it and increases the pain and suffering that we experience around it.
It's something that the Catholic Church should probably have taken to heart in years past, and that's a can of worms that we won't open further on the show, but excellent thoughts. Thank you. Second quote comes to us from adult film star and sex educator Nina Hartley, who was also one of the stars of Boogie Nights, one of my favorite films. She had the following to say: pornography is a form of expression and should not be suppressed. Education is the key to making people understand what they see.
Yeah,
your thoughts?
Nina was originally a nurse, and she and I've corresponded a bit. She is very, very close to a lot of good friends of mine because she has really supported sexual health work around the country. I'll go a step further because I actually have testified as an expert witness in a number of cases around pornography. Pornography is information. at its core, it is ones and zeros in online stuff. It is ideas. One of the things that I'm afraid of amidst today's war on sex, and particularly on pornography, Oklahoma, as you mentioned, all of it, is that the definition of pornography in all of these laws is very variable. And a lot of people start by saying, a lot of these laws start by saying, well, we're prohibiting violent and extreme pornography. But then when you get down to it, they're also wanting to prohibit information for sexually diverse minors around homosexuality or bisexuality. They're wanting to prohibit information around contraception, around kink, around non-monogamy, because pornography is anything that they don't want other people to think or see about sex. That's a very subjective definition. And it's one that I worry about, because pornography is information that ultimately helps people see, oh, I'm not the only one that has that thought or that idea. That actually increases acceptance, which increases self-control.
Interesting. And good on Nina Hartley for really reinventing herself. There's a lot more to her than met the eye, I guess you could say.
100%.
Yeah. Next quote comes to us. This is a little bit of an unusual turn, but it comes from the website missingkids.org, and it has to do with artificial intelligence. And the quote reads as follows: AI technologies represent a new frontier of child exploitation, one that requires proactive solutions and collective action. These manipulative creations can cause tremendous harm to children, including harassment, future exploitation, fear, shame, and emotional distress. End of quote. Well, this is my way of just getting your opinion on this, David, because we know what AI can do. And the argument can be made, I would suggest, that creating artificial images for pedophiles to access could prevent them from trying to do things with actual children. Maybe there's a better way of stating that, but I'm going to guess that you get what I'm asking, David, and I'm curious as to your thoughts.
Wow, yeah, this is a huge can of really, really scary worms.
Yeah.
Every new technology gets used for sexual purposes in some way, shape, or form. Silicone lubricant was invented by NASA for the space shuttle, and now the most common use of silicone lubricant is for sex. Every new technology not only gets used for sexuality. Now, here's a funny one though. The airplane autopilot was invented by a guy in the early 1900s. A few years after he invented it, he crashed a plane in the San Francisco Bay because he was having sex with a woman while they were flying. Now, did he invent the autopilot so that he could have sex while flying, or did he realize the possibility after he invented it? Who knows?
Interesting.
The thing is that after every new technology gets applied sexually, there's also a panic that it is going to destroy sexuality. When the teddy bear was invented, there was a conservative minister, I think in Chicago, that led a national campaign against teddy bears because he was afraid that if little girls didn't have baby dolls, that they wouldn't grow up and want to be moms. AI offers incredible opportunities and scary opportunities that we're not ready to deal with, but we're gonna deal with them. The ability for AI to create deep fakes and to make pornography of people that, you know, are actually not in the pornography, it's here. And people are using it. Now, people used to draw pictures of other people naked, imagining what they look like. AI is just better at it, and it's so good at it that it's scary. We don't know if AI created child sexual abuse material or child pornography, however you use the term, would reduce risk of offending or not, partially because we can't research that question. What I do say, and this kind of gets to another thing for Evan, is that watching child sexual abuse material may or may not be, and probably isn't, a risk factor for engaging in contact sex offending. A majority of sexual offending against children, around 60 to 65% of sexual offending against children, is committed by people who are not pedophiles, committed by people who are not sexually interested in children, but they're on methamphetamine, they're angry, they have access, they have poor education. There's all these other factors. Yeah. They're drunk, etc. And most of the people that watch child sexual abuse material never engage in sexual offending against children, contact offending against children. When we look at that, then the question becomes, well, would AI generated material potentially offer them an avenue that doesn't ever actually harm a child? We don't know. There's a case in Wisconsin right now, a couple of cases related to AI generated child sexual abuse material. And we're all kind of watching to see where this goes. Now, in 2003, the United States Supreme Court said artificial pornography of children is not illegal. It's not child pornography under those laws. Now, it can be deemed obscenity, and that is the modern strategy that a lot of legal systems are using now to try and ban or limit or punish pornography. But again, I'll go back to what Nina was saying. These are ideas. We're punishing for ideas. And when we look at AI, these are a form of thought crime. We're punishing people for having imagination and ideas that we don't want them to have, because AI now gives the ability to create that idea in something so other people can see and share.
So is that to say, and don't let me put words in your mouth, that our legal system unfairly punishes those who are charged with possession of child pornography when there's no evidence of them ever touching a child?
Well, possession of child pornography is a crime in and of itself, and distributing of child pornography is a crime. Of course.
I know. I'm asking you if it should be.
When children have been hurt, absolutely it should be.
No. Okay. So I'm not trying to be argumentative here. Maybe I am. I don't know. But my question is, yes, I mean the idea is that this child pornography was created, of course, with ill intent, and we of course presume that it could done unspeakable damage to the children who are involved in those pictures. But in theory, if I were the attorney for defending someone, saying that this person didn't proactively touch, he never touched anyone, and in fact studies show, as you just pointed out, that he likely never will. He's in the privacy of his own home. And it actually gets back around to the AI thing is why, and I don't know the answer to this either, but of course, but it's so new. But just the idea that they're looking at something that's been created by a computer, and at least in theory, that act right there was not harmful to anyone. And maybe if this prevents, if that's the only thing this person is doing. Anyway, I feel like I'm belaboring now, and I'm sorry, but if you have
I mean, again, these are scorpion problems. I mean, these are just terrifying issues that we have to wrestle with, and our court systems and lawmakers have to wrestle with. A related issue is child sex dolls. I think 2 or 3 states in the United States have banned and criminalized possession of child sex dolls. We don't know if a pedophile having a child sex doll would increase or decrease the risk of them engaging in a sexual crime. Now, access to pornography appears to decrease rates of sex crime in every society and country that has been studied. There are dozens of studies that have shown increased access to pornography decreases rates of sex crime. In areas where there are adult video stores, sex crimes actually go down. In areas where people can access legalized or prostitution, sex crimes go down. There is pretty clearly a diversion effect at play for some people, maybe many, but we just don't know. But we're so terrified of these ideas. We have such moral disgust at the idea of somebody having a child sex doll that we want to criminalize it and punish them. I get it. I feel some of that same
Sure.
fear and disgust as well. But I also know the science and I know the research that shaming them and criminalizing them does not actually make them safer.
Very interesting thoughts, and thank you for indulging me there, David. Great discussion. Evan, back to you to wrap things up.
Producer Dave, that was great. And Dr. David, this was a blast. Informative, insightful, brilliant stuff. Tell everybody listening where they could find out more about your research and work and articles and everything else that you do.
Sure thing. Yeah, I've got a website, davidlayphd.com. All my books are on Amazon. My first book about female non-monogamy is an audio book that is really popular. I also I teach a lot for a group called the Sexual Health Alliance. You mentioned them in my bio, and we do trainings there for people that want to be sex therapists or sex counselors or sex educators. And what's amazing is we're now training people around the world. People in China, in South Africa, in India are participating in our trainings, and we're spreading all of this accurate and non-judgmental information around the world about healthy sexuality.
No, that's great stuff. And again, appreciate you coming on. A lot of fun.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. As said, I think it's so important to get this stuff out there to all of these systems, including judges and courts and lawyers.
That's a wrap on episode 86 of the Schein podcast. A huge thank to producer Dave for keeping the show rolling. And of course, to all of you for tuning in. Big shout out to Dr. David Lay for an absolutely awesome conversation. The overrated, underrated segment never disappoints. Dave, I know you were working all weekend getting this segment lined up. And to all the listeners, remember, you can catch the podcast and this episode and every episode, wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Evan Schein, and I'll talk to you again real soon.